73% of B2B marketers cite an increased interest in influencer marketing this year. And that's good because it's been shown conclusively that buyers are eager to make purchases based on the recommendations of influencers and content creators. And yet there's still a tremendous amount of confusion and trepidation when it comes to influencer marketing. Is it just for B2C brands? Is Instagram losing its luster? Should B2B brands be focusing on TikTok? That's what we're covering in today's episode of Partnership Unpacked. This is Partnership Unpacked, your go-to guide to growing your business through partnerships quickly. I'm your host, Mike Alton, and each episode unpacks the winning strategies and latest trends from influencer marketing to brand partnerships and ideas that you can apply to your own business to grow exponentially. And now, the rest of today's episode. Welcome back to Partnership Unpacked, where I selfishly use this time to pick the brains of experts at strategic partnerships, channel programs, affiliates, influencer marketing, and relationship building. Oh, and you get to learn too. Subscribe to learn how you can amplify your growth strategy with a solid takeaway every episode from partnership experts in the industry. I'm Mike Alton, and I'm here in the home office in St. Louis. Now, I mentioned at the outset how much more marketers, even B2B marketers, are investing in influencer marketing this year. One of the big challenges, though, is that the vast majority of the information online today is geared towards B2C influencers, celebrities, and other social media influencers who've got amassed large followings and are able to make purchase recommendations from their platform. B2B CEOs and CMOs, like many of you, are often left wondering who they're supposed to work with when it comes to influencers. What kind of content should we be creating? And which channels should we really focus on? That's what Gordon Glenister is here to help us with. As a podcast host, consultant, and author of the best-selling book, Influencer Marketing Strategy, How to Create Successful Influencer Marketing, Gordon is a global influencer marketing expert. He recently partnered with Ryan Hilliard of HypeAuditer to put together the State of Influencer Marketing 2023 report, packed with trends and data that we want to unpacked. So let's bring him on and see what we can learn from him and this report. Hey, Gordon, welcome to the show.
Hello, Mike. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you, man. I haven't seen you in a few months. We had a wonderful lunch. We got to get together in London a few months ago. I'm looking forward to seeing you in June. I've got my tea. I won't ask you to raise your cup because I know it's after hours there.
Yeah, well, it's actually my gin and tonic here.
That's fantastic. Gordon, I want us to start by kind of level setting. I want people to understand who you are and why you've got this background, why I've brought you on the show. So just please share a bit more of your background and your experience in influencer marketing.
Well, how long have you got, Mike? I will say that I sort of fell into it, actually, because I used to be the CEO of an industry trade body, which was the Promotional Merchandise Association, for 11 years. And in 2018, that's not long ago, really, I left that job to start a new career, which I thought was actually helping other associations, but ended up founding the UK Association for Influencer Marketing through the Branded Content Marketing Association, actually. We just realized that, yes, while there were organizations that supported the industry for general marketing and social media, there was nothing specifically to support influencer marketing. So we had a big party in a London nightclub and we got invited loads of influencers and brands, and it was just quite amazing. And then not long after that, I launched Influence, the global podcast. And that's now in its 5th season. We've had over 100 episodes. We publish every fortnight. And then a little while after that, I went to a show realizing that I couldn't really see many books on influencer marketing, or they were very niche and specialist. And I really wanted a book to help me. And I thought, well, you know, there's one thing that you can do to become influential if you're not seemingly that in the first place. And that is to surround yourself with highly other influential people. So guess what I did? I went and interviewed loads of people, 70 in total, and then put those comments and attributes into my book. So it's a compendium of information. So I'm really pleased about that. I've actually, I don't know if I've told you this, Mike, but I've also made a film because one of the publishers in Brazil, South America, wanted to translate the book into Portuguese. And they also said, we're interested in making a documentary. Would you like to partner with us? So I thought, yeah, wow, that sounds pretty amazing. And we'd like to fly you over to Brazil for the screening in a Sao Paulo cinema. And they put the tickets on just 1 week before the actual screening, and they sold out in just 1 minute. So that just shows you the power of influencer marketing, particularly in some of these other emerging countries. That was really exciting. And the book last year reached the final for the Business Book Awards, which I was very humbled at. I mean, really, I didn't think I was an author, and all of a sudden I am. But I think what is interesting about what I try and do is I try and declutter the language that sometimes us marketeers tend to use, so that actually the everyday person can understand what influence and influencer marketing is all about. I mean, it's nothing new. I mean, we've trusted the opinions of others through word of mouth for years. So in a way, this is just a new title. But, that's my sort of background. I also write for a London newspaper as well, which is quite exciting. So I've got a column. And that's really important, actually, because one of the issues I've had a big problem with is influencer marketing sometimes gets knocked because obviously there has been some stupid stories in the press, but equally there are some fabulous people that create amazing content with fantastic results in their campaigns. So I just want to be a beacon that celebrates what best practice and those individuals are around influencer marketing.
That's awesome. And you're absolutely right. It's not new. As a term, it's decades old. But when I teach brands how to do influencer marketing, when I'm on a stage or something like that, I often tell the story that one of the first true influencers was Mark Twain back in the early 1900s, right? He was working for the Conklin Pen Company and endorsing their pen. And I tell the story about how he was a perfect brand fit because obviously he was writing and penning his thoughts. So it's not new. But to your point, there are lots of horror stories. There is a lot of confusion today over what B2B brands should be doing. There's, as I said in the outset, trepidation. Brands are a little bit like, I don't know if I really want to work with influencers and deal with all that. So let's dig into this report and see what kind of light we can shed on some of this. What can you tell us just at a high level? What was this report that you worked on with HypeAuditer?
Yeah, well, it was really interesting is looking at some of the trends that have come out of it. I think what we are now, Mike, is we're in the attention economy. People's attention spans are dropping. So we know that video is very, very important. In fact, 80% of the world's internet traffic is now on video. We also know that Instagram is still the go-to place when it comes to influencer marketing. That's not to say, though, that TikTok isn't a significant force now, because actually it's far easier to grow your influence and your brand sometimes on TikTok. Certainly during the pandemic, we had some examples of individuals that came from almost nowhere to having thousands and thousands of subscribers and fans. But you know why? Because that content was authentic, it was entertaining, it was educational. At the end of the day, if content is relevant to their audience, it will fly. That's the bottom line. And, I always say to people, make sure that you really understand what your audience want, not what you think they want. But, esports, of course, big area of growth. We now know that, like 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds prefer TikTok over Google search. We also know that live streaming is becoming an even more popular medium for brands. Once upon a time, if you remember, in the early days of influencer marketing, it's all about brand awareness. More and more we're seeing companies realizing that they're getting high levels of conversion now. And when I say conversion, that isn't always sales, but it's just driving actions further down the funnel and much more quicker. We're also seeing an increase in growth in nano influencers. People prefer user-generated content more and more. Why? Because those individuals are seen to be more relatable and relevant and responsive to their audiences. And so that's really interesting as well. And as you rightly said, B2B growth, we're seeing a lot more of that. And that's all very exciting. But, I always say it's about finding the right influencers that are relevant to your brand. That's most important, And when we've done surveys in the past, we've often talked about 11 times greater ROI than almost any other form of media. I would always caveat that by saying, when done well. And when we're using objectives and goals that we can then measure. You can't measure something if you've not set a goal in place to do that. The other thing I think is really fascinating is about using, one of the benefits of influencer marketing is using a wide range of influencers. You don't have to now put all of your budget into a mega or celebrity influencer, because if it dies, then that's all your money gone. Whereas actually, plenty of examples of where a brand that's starting out or emerging could work with maybe 5 or 10 influencers that are nano influencers, and really, who knows what could happen. Each of those have got different audiences. And what's happening more and more are the growth in these niches and super niches. Those are the ones that are really driving the growth for brands more and more. What else is there? The ages as well. What I find interesting here, just looking at this, for example, we can share a copy of this, by the way, afterwards. If we look at 7 out of 10 of the most talked about brands on TikTok were new to this list in 2022. Brands like Shein Official, Target, Netflix, Sephora, Amazon, all up there with working and using influencer marketing. But the big fashion brands like Pretty Little Thing, Fashion Nova, they're all very much still in play.
Yes, it's fascinating. And I appreciate that what you've done is given us a very high level, broad strokes. Here are a lot of the conclusions that we found in this report. And so now we're going to go through and we're going to unpack a lot of the things that you just said. And for those of you watching live, feel free to drop in a question if there's something that really stood out to you or you've got big questions about. I know one of my first questions is you talked about how easy it is to, relatively speaking, build a following on TikTok, how popular live streaming continues to be to this today, even though we're not live streaming to TikTok and we're not live streaming to Instagram. And yet Instagram continues to dominate as the preferred platform for influencer marketing. Why do you think that might be?
Well, I think it's because it was there first, and therefore that's where people have traditionally grown their audience. And they've had a number of tools that have been developing over the last 2 or 3 years now, which makes it very, very easy it's like it's a safe place for people where they know their audience is. And so if you think about it with the others, they're having to grow and develop those, whereas Instagram is visually stimulating as well. It's got a lot of the functionality which influencers really find beneficial and useful.
Yeah, I think the visual component is a big key to being a successful influencer, because if you can see me and you can hear me, it's a lot easier for me to establish trust and authenticity. And I say that as a blogger, I love to write, but I know this is a much more powerful medium for me to communicate and deliver that sort of thing. So one of the other things I noticed, it wasn't surprising to see nano influencers come in as the largest percentage of influencers, but was shocking was seeing nano influencers score the highest engagement rate at 2.53%, according to the report. That's more than double every other influencer tier. Why do you think that might be? And kind of what's the takeaway for brands, particularly in that B2B space?
Well, I sort of touched on it earlier. I think it's because they seem to be more relatable to their audience. They're more responsive. If you think about it, you're a mid-tier influencer with 100,000 followers. And let's just say you had a high percentage of comments and likes. You're not going to have the time, perhaps, to be able to go back to each of those and continue the conversation. Whereas you're more likely to do that if you've got a smaller audience, which actually builds up a sense of community. I tend to see that more within nano influencers. So therefore, the followers feel that they're more closely aligned with that influencer. It's one of them. It could be somebody that they could meet locally, as opposed to like a megastar that feels like it's an aspirational and untouchable individual, almost like a celebrity. And so when those people, those nano influencers, start recommending products, they do so in a way that just feels authentic and genuine. When they're doing some of their stories, it looks fun and it's exciting. When they do maybe, let's just say, a makeup video, they're taking a bit more time to show people how these products are working. And it's not overly rehearsed. I'm generalizing now, but generally. Yeah. And by the way, we've talked about beauty and fashion. You could be a nano influencer fly fishing expert with 1,000 followers. But because it's such a niche audience, I would have thought that actually somebody telling the stories of what it's like to fish on the lake all of the different tackle they used, what happens in the night when the fish comes. You can imagine some really good content there, which for a rod manufacturer would be absolutely perfect. So I'm a great believer in the relevance of the follower base is as important as the number of followers overall.
And I love that you dropped the word community. That's definitely a perspective on audience that may or may not be there, particularly for that larger influencer, right? Where they're not really thinking about their audience as a community. And maybe they are, maybe they say they are, but they aren't necessarily treating them like community. Because in their defense, if you've got 1 million followers, it's hard to be in community at that kind of a scale when it's one to many. But yeah, those nano influencers have that built-in benefit where it's just a lot easier for them to engage.
To try and answer that question, we'll have a team behind them that is doing that. But then, of course, then you feel like, is that really the person that's liking and commenting like that? Or is that the publicist doing that? Is that the part of the social media team? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, because if they're doing it authentically, that means they're responding as Sue the author -George in lowercase after the comment, right? So we all know this is actually George that made this comment on behalf of the influencer. Yeah, that doesn't have the same feeling, not at all.
I mean, look, we're all about creating relationships here. I always say brands, when they work well with influencers, it's about building relationships. And I know you're going to talk to me about long-term relationships. It's really, really important.
Oh, yeah. We're definitely going to come back to that because that's one of the most key and core underlying principles of the entire show. Is something I talk about with every guest. But to stay on this particular topic, because we saw the same overall results in TikTok with regard to nano influencers, but the overall engagement rates were tremendously higher than that of Instagram. Is that a sign that brands should be shifting priority to TikTok?
Well, I tell you why I think that is because it's largely an entertainment channel. Not all, but it is being seen as that. So, of course, by the sheer nature of some of the content, I mean, it's very addictive, TikTok. I mean, for those of you that are watching or listening to this, I'm sure those of you that are on TikTok or watch it, once you get into it, you just think to yourself, oh my goodness, where's that last 2 hours gone? But it is. I know myself, I will comment and like on way more content on TikTok than I will on Instagram. But am I going to buy anything from those individuals? Am I going to do anything? No. So I would suggest my call to action is far lower on TikTok, even though my engagement is. So I just think it's because of the nature of it being slightly more entertainment driven rather than purposeful driven on Instagram.
How interesting. Now, it was notable that the top brands that were represented on TikTok were B2C. Have you seen any B2B brands that have had some notable success on TikTok?
It's still in its infancy, but there are some organizations on TikTok that are doing this. I mean, I saw one guy that was like an American lawyer, but he was, normally, many of his competitors wouldn't be anywhere near TikTok. But I thought, what a smart way to promote what you do in this space when your competitors are nowhere to be seen. Because, if you think about the nature of the audience of TikTok, which is still relatively young, what a great way to educate these people about the law, but do so in a really entertaining and inspiring, helpful way. So definitely I've seen examples of that. And lots of financial experts that have appeared on TikTok, particularly when it comes to property buying and investing as well, which again is really helpful for a lot of younger people who have found some of that. Look, we've got more people investing in stocks and shares than we have ever had in a generation. I would put a massive amount of that down to social media and some of the tech platforms supporting that, because traditionally they wouldn't be going to financial advisors or to banks. So I think what's really interesting is seeing that growth develop there.
There's definitely a lot of room on that platform for businesses that have traditionally not done a lot on social media. to really, really do well. One of my favorite TikTokers is actually a clothier and a suit tailor in Leeds. And he's just got the best TikTok channel. I love it. Every video, he's teaching you how to tie a tie and how to properly find a suit jacket that fits. And every once in a while, he's showing you some antique satchel or something that he's purchased that's available for sale. And they're all, just really interesting, really well done, but very simple videos as well. Often it's just a single shot from a distance in his shop.
Yeah.
Very clever.
Yeah, very clever.
Now, one of the conclusions the report reached that you actually already touched on was that brands will invest even more into influencer marketing this year because it, quote, remains one of the cheapest forms of branded content. How was that conclusion reached?
Well, I mean, you can buy influencers now extremely cost effectively. For a couple of $1,000s, you could get a number of nano influencers to run a campaign with you. And that's not including gifting. I mean, there's still plenty of examples of where gifting can be a very successful medium, although there are no guarantees that when you send a gift to an influencer, they're going to post about it. But if you really thought and find the right influencers that are bang on your profile, and you've taken the time to engage with them before perhaps reaching out. When I say engage with them, I mean comment and like some of their posts, so that when you do reach out to them, you make time to make reference to that, nurture that and recognize, somebody that's built like a considerable audience that's in your target space. That's an achievement. What influencers hate more than anything else is when somebody reaches out to them and says, "Dear influencer," and it looks like it's one of 1,000 emails that they've been sent. This is a human being at the end of the day, working very hard in many instances to create really amazing and relevant content for their audience. Because remember, there's two things that are very important for an influencer. One, to grow and nurture their audience. Two, is to be paid for their content that they have created and the advertising opportunity that audience presents.
Could not agree more. Now let's hear now from our CMO to Gorpulse about how brands should be investing in another channel.
It's the Arc de Triomphe. Can you imagine if you're in charge, if you're the CMO of Marketing Paris? What are your main channels? Wow, there's the Arc de Triomphe. There's the Eiffel Tower. There's the Louvre. Those are your channels you're going to use to drive tourism dollars in. Okay, now, but you're not the CMO of Paris. In fact, you're the CMO of your company, product, service. So what are your main channels? Well, I'm going to guess there are things like pay-per-click, maybe trade shows, events, maybe content. Those are all pretty predictable, right? Let me ask you this question. Are you treating social media as a main channel? By the way, only 1.8% of you today measure social media and can prove an ROI in that investment. HubSpot and Gartner say social media is the number one channel to invest in this year. Are you doing it? If not, I can tell you why. You're not doing it because you don't have the tools, you don't have the mentality, and that's okay. We've got you covered. You change the mentality, we'll give you the tools. Gorpulse tracks all the ROI for you. One place to manage all your social media activity, your number one channel, change your success. Treat social media as a channel, one CMO to another. My name is Daryl. I'm with the Gorpulse. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, let's get back to influencer marketing with Gordon Glenister. Now, Gordon, the report also made the observation that brands will be working more long-term with influencers rather than one-offs. How important do you think that is?
Very important. Influencer marketing is not a silver bullet, is it? It's the same way that, if you watched an ad on TV or you heard an ad on a radio station, you wouldn't, just rush out and go and buy that product straight away. You'd want to perhaps see it a number of times or hear it a number of times. It's the same with influencer marketing, really. So if you think about where you're creating a brand partnership, you are helping the influencer educate your brand with their audience in a consistent, regular way. Remember, however good the influencer is, their content is only still going to be seen by around 5 or 10% of their audience. And that's still very small. So they need to make that content work, we're now, as I said earlier, we're now in the attention economy. Everybody's trying to share a voice. And that is the reason why a lot of brands now are adding paid media to that influencer content to really boost it so that it's seen by more people.
So what advice do you have then for B2B brands that are looking to establish those more long-term relationships for influencers?
So I think, I'm a bit of an influencer myself. And one of the things I want to do when I work with a brand is try and just really understand what it is they are trying to do with their audience. So whether or not it's co-creating a report, which can be a very, very successful way of getting a number of key opinion formers talking about research. I mean, this, for example, the report that we're talking about on influencer marketing, when HypeAuditer approached me, we then ran an event off the back of it. And obviously then I shared that with my audience. So their benefit, of course, is that they're getting more people seeing the report. And here we are talking about it on another show here. So it is a really important way to find those individuals and find the medium that you think is going to work well for it. It could be a podcast, it could be a report, could be Twitter, LinkedIn. We've talked a little bit about on this report about Instagram and YouTube and TikTok, but let's not forget, particularly for B2B, LinkedIn and Twitter can be very good mediums to growing that audience as well.
100% agree, particularly for, again, that B2B brand influencer. That's a lot of the people that I work with. That's like you. That's me. I'm a B2B brand influencer, have been for years. LinkedIn is one of the most important platforms to focus on. Now, at one point, the report claims that 60% of YouTube subscribers make purchases based on creator recommendations, and that the longer form video is preferred because of the depth of information it affords. But then later, the report stresses the recommendation of short form video. So here's my last question for you. Which is it? Do brands need to choose one or the other when it comes to short form versus long form video? Where do we land?
So my view with that is it depends on the content. I mean, if you look at educational courses, for example, if you look at more in-depth interviews, if you look at demos and things like that, makeup tutorials, then long form content can work really, really well. But where we're talking, look, YouTube has been promoting YouTube Shorts really almost as a way to compete with TikTok more and more. It just really depends on the type of content, what you're trying to say. Sometimes short videos can be almost like a trailer version of the bigger content, almost like leapfrogging and say, look, this is what, here's the short session today. Go and have a look at the full version on our YouTube channel. So people get a taste and a sense of what something's about. If they want more, they can go and see that in longer form. But it is interesting, isn't it, just to see how things are changing. And, if you really, we were talking about some content earlier, if you really like somebody and you really follow them, the fact that these creators are holding the attention of their audience for 45 minutes to an hour, or if it's live stream, I know that some live streamers there that are like always on if they're selling products, hours and hours and hours. And you think, wow, haven't things changed?
You're so right. In fact, it's a tactic that we use here for this show, right? Where this is a long form video show. We go, 20 to 45 minutes on average. Some of the shows are recorded and go straight to podcast. Others, like you, we broadcast live first and then it goes to the podcast. But for every single one of those, we record video first and we take some snippets of that video and we turn it into short form vertical video that we're able to put to YouTube Shorts, to TikTok, to Instagram Reels, to give people a taste of the kind of conversations that we have here on Partnership Unpacked.
Well, and Gordon, that's an example of exactly what I've just said. So a great example.
Yeah, Gordon, this has been fantastic. I love having you here. I'm so glad we get to have these kinds of conversations. Can you let folks know where they can follow you, where they can learn more about you and the work that you're doing, your upcoming film series in Portugal that I expect to be invited to next? Where do we go?
That's really great of you. So I've got my own website, which is gordonglenister.com. And pretty much everything is on there. You can follow me on LinkedIn, on all the channels, really. Fortunately, I think there's only one Gordon Glenister, so that's quite helpful, and you should be able to find me there. And happy to follow everybody back and help wherever I can.
Awesome. Well, that's it. That's all we've got for today. Folks, I appreciate that you came by. If you want to show up to more live shows like this, be sure to subscribe to the show calendar at agorapulse.com/calendar. We do this about once per month, so we've got one already scheduled up for next month. And if you don't want to miss any shows at all, subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Partnership Unpacked is there. We've got a lot of episodes there. We've got a whole bunch more. We come out every single Monday. So until next time, take care. Thank you for listening to another episode of Partnership Unpacked, hosted by Mike Alton and powered by AgoraPulse, the #1 rated social media management solution, which you can learn more about at agorapulse.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player. Be sure to leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us. And if you want to be part of our audience during live broadcasts, take a look at our calendar at agorapulse.com/calendar. Until next time.